Now we're going to be playing with blending modes and effects. You can do some really nice things, and you can also do a lot of cheating with this. Later we're going to have a look at some of the shadow effects, and then we're going to go on to things like bevel and emboss, something you should never do, but we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the first things we want to do is we're just going to use these little Facebook icons to test the blending modes. Now the blending modes are very easy to access. They're just up here on the right hand side. So if you just open them, okay, you'll see that on the layers here it's actually got the name of the blending mode that we're going to use, and the blending modes are just here. Now try and think of blending modes as sort of how one layer interacts with the other, so it depends on what each layer is on what it will look like. So let's take the first one, multiply. So as you can see there, multiply sort of lets the layer see through. And if the layer was sort of darker, then you'd see that the Facebook icon would be darker as well if it was lighter. So it kind of goes through it. Hard to describe how it actually works because it really does depend on what the layer is. So if we've got this sort of brownish background, you can see that that's coming through into the Facebook one. Multiply is probably one of the ones I use the most. It really gives some nice effects. So try it out on different things. The next one we have is color burn, and color burn is just here. Okay, gives some strange effects. It does tend to be very useful when you're doing sort of like landscapes and you want to put text on top of it. The color burn tends to look quite nice, as well as multiply as well. The next one is lighten. It's a bit of a strange one, this, because it doesn't always go lighter. Again, if you've got a really dark background, then it will show through that. Next one, overlay, probably one of my favorites. An overlay is very useful if you want to sort of just have text or something in the background of a picture that sort of kind of looks ghosted. So if you want a sort of ghosted effect, it's the best way to do it. The next one is difference. So this always looks weird. I've never used it, to be very honest, ladies and gentlemen. But you can get some kind of nice effects. It gives that sort of a negative effect. Same as pressing Shift and U. Luminosity, not one I've used very much, but again it does depend on what you're doing. But it does tend to inherit whatever the colours are in the background. So that's blending modes, not too bad. Give them a try on different types of pictures and you can see the kind of effects. Personally, I never really know the name of what I'm going to use. I just sort of go through each one of these until I think, that's the one. So you don't have to remember how they work, but just sort of keep in mind that they are there and you can do some lovely blending effects with them. Next one we're going to have a look at is some shadows. Now shadows are a very key thing to making things look a little bit more real. I'm just going to zoom in and we can see here we've got the shadows. So I'm just going to close this one and open up these ones here, and we can see all the different things that we can do on them. So if I just turn this off and on, these are just the effect names, but these ones here are actually the individual ones that we're going to do. So if it says drop shadow, that's what we're going to put on it. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. I can double click on the area that's just outside of the actual text, or I can right click blending options. Now for years I was doing blending options, but one of my students actually showed me that by accident, and it's a really quick way to get there. So just double click and you'll see that the layer style comes on just like this. I'm just going to move it over like that so you can see. Now whenever you're doing layer styles, as I said before, always click the word, not the text. So if I was to click on drop shadow, the box, then I would just see it turned on, but I wouldn't be able to change any of the settings. So just make sure that you click on the word, not the box. Now one thing I would say about drop shadows is they can be very easy to move around and stuff like that, but they do have something called global light. So if you've got any other thing using the same drop shadow and you start messing around with it like this, it will sort of turn all the other shadows different as well. So if you do want it to be independent, just turn that off. A couple of things about shadows. One of them is I never ever have them over 50%, right? So if you just move this down, you can see it's much softer. Anything over say 50% tends to look unreal, as if you've got like a halogen bulb spotlight thing on top of it. So try and turn that down. 40 is a good number. Yeah, it looks nice and soft and kind of real. The next one is the distance. The distance is, if I go to 0 there, it makes the shadow go around it, and that's as if you're looking down on the item. So if you're looking towards the side, then you can have it to the side like this, or like this, or like this. But if you want it to be right above, use a distance of 0. The next thing is the size. The size is just like how big is the actual shadow, and you can see here how it affects it. The spread is how sort of intense that is. As you can see there, it can be very, very, very intense. So I normally keep this size around about 10 or something like that, and then the distance is 0. It looks quite nice. So click OK, and there we're done. The next one is an inner shadow. These can be quite useful if you want to make buttons look as though they've been pressed. And if you just right click, blending options, and again we're going to click on the word, not the box, so inner shadow like that. And I'm just going to move this down like that. Okay, now with this one you can make it look really, really real. So if you just do the size of say 1 and then turn down that opacity, you get this lovely sort of effect like this. With the size bigger, it gives a sort of focus. So if I just sort of like, can you see how that's sort of focusing on that? Let me make it a little bit stronger. So if you turn up, there you go. You get this really nice effect. It's really good on pictures. So what I want you to do now is just make the size around about 4, and then the distance around about 2, and then just turn that down a little bit, and you can see it's got this nice inner shadow. If you do absolute 0, it looks like it's been pressed in, as you can see just here. So have a play around with them. When you're using Photoshop, you never tend to have a specific thing that you're looking for. You just play around with all the settings until you're happy. Alright, so click OK. Now the next one is outer glow, and outer glow is very, very nice when you're doing things like suns, and if you want to have a button that looks like it's been hover over. So we're just going to click on this one. Alright, now let's just double check. Now outer glow is the name here, we've got inner glow on here, so I want to try both of these for you. So inner glow and outer glow we're going to try. So I'm just going to double click. Now one thing about outer glow is if I do outer glow right now, you won't be able to see it very well because of the white background. So what we're going to do is we're going to try inner glow. Okay, so once you click on inner glow, you can increase the size as well. It's quite nice for when you want to do buttons that look like you put your mouse over and things like that. Alright, so that's inner glow and outer glow, but it does depend on what the background color is. The next one is all the way back from the 1990s, and I'm allowed to say this because MC Hammer once said it, is don't touch this. Please don't touch bevel emboss. It tends to look really, really horrible. So we're just going to try that now actually. So I'm just going to try the effects here, and I'm going to move down, and there's bevel and emboss. Okay, we're going to double click. And a lot of beginners do this. Now this is the reason I wanted to show it to you. A lot of beginners, for some reason, think that that's nice. Or you can do outer bevel, or that's nice, or pillow emboss, or that's nice. They're all horrible. They don't look real. They look really, really disgusting. So my advice, don't try it. If you really want to, just whack up the size absolutely massive like that, and you get a sort of gradient overlay effect, which we're going to look at in a moment. But my advice, bevel and emboss, worst thing to be ever invented. Click OK. Alright, let's move down. Now we've got color overlay now. This is kind of useful when you have something that you just want to fill with color. If it's a shape or a picture or something like that, it does fill it completely. It doesn't shade it or anything like that. So if you just do color overlay like that, it'll just change the color. It is useful, but it is kind of cheating. But if you do want to sort of quickly change the color of something, then you can. Alternatively, you can use the shape. But do be aware that color overlay will just make something look completely as that color. Okay, so if it's a circle or a square or a picture of a hand, it will all go blue. Now the next one is one of my favorites. It's a little trick I learned, and it's very, very, very useful. I'm actually just going to click on here and name this properly. So gradient overlay, like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use this as a sort of way of making the button look like it's 3D. So I'm just going to double click. Alright, now watch this, it's a really clever tip. Go to gradient overlay and you'll see that it goes black and white. Now, essentially what a gradient is sort of going from one color to another, and if you want a button to make like look like it's something that you can press, you want a lighter version going to a darker version. So the tip is just turn down the opacity like this, and then you get this lovely gradient effect. Now, the advantage of that is you've just received an email from your client and he wants to change all the buttons to a different color. Now you could have to go through the whole arduous process of bottom left hand corner getting those gradient colors again, or you double click and let's make this now red. Isn't that cool? Very, very easy to do. And it's one of those things that helps web designers speed up a little bit. Okay, so give those a try. The bevel and emboss, try it, never use it again. Color overlay, try it, and then just know that it always selects the entire thing. And gradient overlay, a nice way of controlling your buttons without having to keep selecting two colors. Lastly, what you might want to do is actually use one of your collection of the different effects and things that you've done and move it from one place to another. So right now we have a very boring, bland, I'm just going to zoom out, button like this, but on the left hand side we've got a very nice sort of gradient overlay with a stroke and one of the nice shadows that we just talked about. So what we want to do is grab all this stuff and stick it on this one. So first what we need to do is we need to venture into the frame uneditable. I know that might sound scary, but we can do it. So we're going to move all the way down and you can see submit here. Alright, we're going to turn that on and off, make sure it's the right one, it is, and then turn this one on and off as well. So if I just now look here, I've got submit button here, and then in the frame uneditable I've got the same as well, but it's got the effects. Now the tip to this is the option key. If you're on a PC, it's Alt. So all you have to do is hold down Alt, grab the effects, and then drop them like that. And I'm going to move the button as well. Alright, so hold down Option or Alt, drag it, leave it on top, boom, look at that. Absolutely fantastic, and saved us loads and loads of time of doing all the settings again. And if you're creating a website and you want to have different buttons and you're doing all the design, you don't have to keep redoing things. So that's a nice little tip on how to do it. So let's just recap. We had a look at the different blending modes which are here on your layers panel. We had a look at the sort of different shadows and outer glows. Then the bevel embosses, we have a looked at how never to use that. The color overlay, the gradient, how we can use it to control our button color with just one click. And then having the ability to copy all of the blending options and the effects from one place to another.